Jets, 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 Jets. The best team on paper in Jets history, they said. All to come up in flames again thanks to El Capitan and a 31-0 run. And as they say, if you're alive, you can't be bored in San Francisco. If you're not alive, San Francisco will bring you to life. But recently, all they bring you is disappointment. All this and more in another edition of the three-man coverage.
Whoa, 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 every single day.
Nice. Well done. Poor Jets fans. I mean, seriously, how hard has that franchise had it over the years to then think the second coming of Jesus was approaching when Adams got traded over to him, and then everything just went up in flames as usual. It's the same old Jets.
Yeah, got a feel for him. What do we know, though, after 7 weeks? The Jets are still shit. The Browns have come back to earth. The Pats won their Super Bowl in week 1 against Cincy. the Bengals don't like playing football in September. And the Chiefs are the Chiefs. That's what we know out of week 7. No surprises there, really.
Unfortunately, the Chiefs are the Chiefs.
That's right. Undefeated, third of the way through the season pretty much. As we were touching on pre-show, they're just playing complimentary football, aren't they? When all these other teams just can't seem to find a way to get everything together, unfortunately.
All right, guys. Shall we kick off? Waiver wire pickups. Good. Anybody from week 7 that you know? We've got a couple more games to go in for the week. But any waiver wire pickups, any early standouts that you see that would be worth a risk taking a punt for, particularly with some key injuries in this week?
Yeah, well, the Mr. Holdout contract man, Brandon in team Ayuk, is most likely going to be out for a very, very long time. And the waiver wire pickup, I think that's going to be quite hot this week if he isn't rostered currently is, and I know he's currently injured as well, so it probably doesn't help his cause, but I think Jennings is going to be widely added to a lot of teams this week, given the Ayuk injury. We've seen what he can do when he is either the number 1 or 2. There has been a couple of times this year where Deebo Samuel and Ayuk either were not in the team or not performing, and he had that obviously outlier game where he scored over 40 points. So I think Jennings is going to be pretty hot property this week.
Well, I'm also like another 49er, and it's not going to be Jennings because Jennings will be quite heavily rostered, but I think Ricky Parasol will be someone to look at. So he was our third-round pick. He did start to feature late in the game. Forget about Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell sucks. He will not feature that much at all regardless, but I think Ricky Parasol will be the next person in line. He did look pretty decent considering his situation where he was shot earlier in the year. And I think he will be a good target because he does a lot of his work in the slot and his comparisons were to Cooper Kupp. So hopefully for 49ers fans, and I can't be too aggrieved about performances like the Jets fans, but we do need a bit of a spark and hopefully Ricky Parasol will be the guy.
Ricky Parasol, did he come in for much of the game against in that Niners game? Was there, like when Ayuk come out, did you see much of him feature after Ayuk's departure?
Late. He got a couple of looks. He did make a couple of catches late. I mean, like I said, it was nothing spectacular. Early on, it was pretty much, look, I can't really say we had much of an offense anyway, but it seemed like a lot of the offense was running through Jordan Mason, if you can call it running through Jordan Mason, because they didn't really feature him that much either. And also looking at George Kittle. George Kittle was the safety blanket. Again, he was incredible. He's probably the all-pro tight end at the moment. So he did feature late. I think he just needs a bit of time. He was a high-end draft pick, so there's no reason why they shouldn't feature him.
And if you're looking for tight end, guys, I've come across a tight end that could be interesting. He's only rostered in 40% of rosters, consensus by Fantasy Pros. Tucker Kraft is your tight end 3 after 7 weeks. He had a quiet game, so 3 receptions, 4 targets, and a touchdown. That touchdown was pretty impressive, though, so he's got some athletic ability. He could be a sneaky get, and I'm actually surprised that he's not rostered in more teams, considering where his standing is after week 7 at tight end 3. Any thoughts on him if you've come across him at all?
I think people are a little bit wary of him only because of the amount of weapons that the Packers already have, first of all, especially at wide receiver. And obviously the outlier game that he had a couple of weeks ago. He's probably not going to command too many targets, so he's probably got too much reliance on the touchdown upside, I guess. So doesn't really have a very safe floor. Having said that, the way the tight end position has been this year, I mean, it can't hurt. He's in a pretty good offense. He's probably going to be targeted here and there in the red zone, being a bigger guy. So if you're really desperate, yep, go for it. But the position changes at tight end this year have been crazy. Someone like, and this is again just a personal thing, like someone like David Njoku, who before this week was ranked 43, had a huge day today. So don't be surprised if he's in the top 20 now after that performance. Like there's just so much variance from week to week so far. And as Yen said, I think Kittle is the only real standout from start to finish so far.
Yeah, he's Kittle is the early consistent tight end performer. Even though he missed that one game, you'll see his points are pretty much even with Brock Bowers, who's probably the tight end one just. But if you're looking for consistency, Kittle's probably the guy, and he's someone that you actually drafted quite late. And for Tucker Kraft, it's just, like you said, it's that inconsistency because he's like boom or bust. He'll have one huge week one week, and then he'll have a quiet game the following week. So after he's what he scored 2 weeks ago, 30 odd points, 40 points, because he had that massive TD catch. The following week he gets like a point. So it's hard to rely on, especially with that Packers offense. And not to say that the Packers offense is not great, because it is. But there's this so unpredictable because there's no clear cut number one anything anywhere really, and that's what makes them so dangerous. So you can pick him up. I think it'd be matchup dependent. So if teams are weak against the tight end, probably play him then. Other than that, I wouldn't rely on him on a week in week out basis.
And just to go to Gino's point, you must have 10 asked that because David Njoku, after his performance against Cincy, just entered the top 20. So he's actually tight end 20. So a good shout there. And to your point also, Gino as well, Tucker Kraft, when you talk about it, yes, it is skewed because when you look at the amount of targets he's had over 7 weeks, he's had 30 targets over 7 weeks. And Brock Bowers, who's tight end number 2, has had 60 targets over that same period. So it's... so he's got 50% less targets than Brock Bowers, but then it's probably skewed because of that monster game that he had. But he's still in the top 5. So I think to Yen's point, I think that's a pretty good shout there. Tight, he'd be match dependent. Any other waiver wire pickups, any honourable mentions you can think of? If not, we'll just move on.
I mean, look, if you're desperate, you're probably looking at Mariota, aren't you?
Yes. I was actually going to mention him. Yeah, what do you think? I mean, he's always... I wouldn't pick him up, but what do you think if Jaden Daniels is no longer a go?
I personally wouldn't pick him up, but I guess that offense was still humming without Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels was out really early. I mean, granted, they only played the Carolina Panthers, but he did look serviceable, but I wouldn't be playing him.
There's similar style plays though. Like Mariota does like to run as well. Maybe not as effectively as Daniels. I mean, you're pretty much scraping the bottom of the barrel though if you've got to go out and have a look at someone like Mariota to start in your team. But with buys coming up, or if you're in a tough spot with an injury, and if you've got Daniels and you want to keep that offensive team in your lineup, then yeah, for sure, go for it.
You know, I was thinking earlier today because I actually saw Jameis Winston come in late into the game against Cincinnati, and he was the emergency quarterback. And when you think about 10 years ago, Jameis Winston was the number 1 overall pick and Mariota was the number 2 pick in that draft, and both backup quarterbacks. And you're thinking, wow, what a fall from grace. Jameis Winston goes to the Bucks, has okay success there, but he really didn't propel himself, or while he was projected to be the number 1 pick, really wasn't that game changer, I guess. The face of the franchise for the Bucks. And Mariota just never got off the ground at the Titans, and has been a journeyman ever since. But when you think about like where they were 10 years ago, what a fall from grace, But they're finding their way in the NFL still, and they're still kicking around of some sort.
Interesting how they both came in today as well, as you said, to your point. Both just happened to play again on the same day. Like, weird how everything works out like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to kick off with our next segment. We're going to talk about the Jets. So, to Ian's intro there, Jets, Jets. Are the Jets better with or better off with Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback? What say you, Gino?
Much to the dismay of a very, very loyal listener, hello out there, my friend. Watching the anguish on his face as the game played out today it's quite sad. Like, it reminds me of, again, someone that has to follow St Kilda in the Australian Football League would feel very, very similar to the way this man did today. When the news broke that Davante Adams was coming over to reunite with Aaron Rodgers, this man was extremely happy. Thought, this is it. Everything's finally going to click into place. The game started. Of course, Aaron Rodgers was going to throw the first pass to Davante Adams. What happens? Throws it a little bit too wide. Adams drops the ball. I turned to him and I said, look, it's all right. It's only the first pass. You'll get back on track. And pretty much from that play, nothing really worked bar the early Breece Hall touchdown, and then old man Zerline came in to just show that he's even more cooked than we thought. And the Jets are just doing Jets things. They just can't seem to get it going, even with the reuniting of Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. So, look, honestly, I feel for Jets fans. I'm sure you guys will have a fair bit to say about that too. But again, for me, shit rolls downhill. So it's got to start at the top.
So are they better with, or are they better off without Aaron Rodgers?
I think they're better with, but what other options do they have, really? They've almost gone all in, I guess, without even going all in. Like, teams that go all in generally are thereabouts to actually contend. The Jets aren't even close, I don't think, to contending. So, yes, they're better off, but it's not really working out so far. So it's probably early to call it, but yeah, it's not really working out so far, unfortunately.
So if you're debating this, Yen, do you think the Jets are better off without him?
Well, thank you for taking that tack, because it makes my point of view a lot easier to now make. I think, look, I was going to say, what other option do they have? Especially after this year when, like, contracts are up for grabs. You've made all this investment in Aaron Rodgers and what he wants. If he goes, you're screwed. You don't have a top-end pick to get one of those top 3 to 5 quarterbacks. You don't have any of that. So best case scenario is that you need to stick with Aaron Rodgers. And you've already succumbed to his wishes, so you're going to have to continue to do that. Having said all that, and I wish I was there, this guy is one of my best mates. I distinctly remember him saying at the start of the year Hey man, I'm so confident. Like, if anyone is to contend with the contend with the Chiefs, it's us. He said that verbatim, word for word. Every year for the last 2 years since Rodgers has come there, his confidence has been sky high. And I told him, man, don't do it to yourself again. You're just going to get hurt.
That
And he
doesn't
said,
sound like him. He's
nah,
usually
man.
humble. Like, man,
Nah,
he's a skeptic and usually humble when it comes to that stuff. I could
nah,
never.
confidence
Man,
was
you are
sky high.
telling Porkies, mate. Surely he didn't say that. Did he?
I swear to God, I'm not telling
He did.
And if
Even
he
at the
sees
sign of
this,
the
he better
cross too.
comment down below and say that was the truth, because he dead set said when we we're at the pub one day, nah, man, like, if anyone's to contend with the Chiefs, it's pretty much going to be us and the Bills. I'm like, okay, man, take it easy. On a side note, right? They are better off without Aaron Rodgers. Like, after watching this game, this guy's a morale killer, right? They were 15-6 up at one point. He throws an interception in the first half, middle to late in the second quarter, and that just deflated the entire team. And I'm not sure what happened from that particular point onwards, but the Steelers ended up rattling off 31 straight points to 0. Okay, it didn't also help that Zerline missed the field goal, which would have brought them back within 3 points. But then later on in the second half, again, Garrett Wilson, another person who I defended and I said had more value than Puka Nacua at the start of the season, right? What an absolute idiot I look like. He had a thrown directly into his chest and arms, and it bounced off him, and it went for an interception, almost went all the way down for a pick six. They got tackled at the 1 yard line and still ended up as a touchdown. But what I'm trying to say is his attitude sucks. It's infectious in the entire squad. So the offense's head went down. Then as a result, the defense's heads went down. And then you saw in the second half, they were just leaking points and possessions. And I haven't seen Sauce Gardner like manhandled by anyone like this, especially in the first couple of weeks when he was going up against like Jefferson and all that. He kept Jefferson relatively quiet. George Pickens looked like an absolute superstar. Shit-ass year so far, but he was grabbing everything. So 2 defensive pass interferences against him. And then he had 111 yards, 2 massive plays, a touchdown, right? So his attitude is infectious. And then he's trying to look for flags all the time when it's not going his way. I listened to the press conference afterwards with Aaron Rodgers, and they asked him, so what do you think needs to be done to get the season back on track? He goes, first of all, we got to stop listening to you guys. And he's referencing the media because it's the media's fault, right? Then the other question was asked was, so it looked like your relationship with Devontae Adams is a little bit rusty. Did you think it will end up this way? And he goes, no, other than that one deep crossing route where we missed it. And he blamed Devontae Adams for not running to that spot. He goes, everything was fine. So this guy has thrown everyone else up under the bus. He's gotten everything that he has wanted, and he got his coach fired. So if you're looking at that defense as well, if Salah had his deficiencies, right? But he was arguably the best coach on that coaching staff. Because if you're looking at the way the defense is playing, they are absolutely shocking at the moment, right? They didn't downgrade Hackett. They got rid of Salah. It looks like they're going to fire Joe Douglas, and I thought he's done a relatively good job because he's gotten everything that Rodgers can potentially want. He's drafted well with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson and so forth. Some of the O-line picks like Elijah Vera-Tucker and Mekhi Becton, horrible, fine. But those skill positions players he has been able to find. And it also starts with Woody Johnson as well. The fish rots from the head down, right? So until this culture changes, nothing is going to change in terms of the Jets. And it just seems like a domino effect. So they had this negative leader, right, starting, and then they bring this negative quarterback as well to counteract that. It's not going to happen. So they had this negative ethos at the Jets, and it's just not going to change until one of them goes. And Woody Johnson's not going to go until he dies, and then he hands it off to one of his kids. And the only thing that's left is just Aaron Rodgers. So what can you do? Right? You're better off blowing it up and starting afresh, really, because they're not going to win. They beat the Jets, which was the Pats, which was like their Super Bowl. And it was a blowout win. Then they won another close one. And then any other competition, they just lost. Another mate of ours in the chat, he was like raving about Devontae Adams and how it opens up. And I go, look, until they win 4 or 5 games in a row, then we can't talk about the Jets as a serious contender and how they've changed. I go, just wait and see. And I was kind of expecting a similar downfall to last week's game where they got off to an early lead and they just shut the bed, right? And the same thing happened. So no, Aaron Rodgers has to go. I don't know what you're going to have to do, but you're going to have to rebuild and wait another 5 years. I'm sorry. Breece Hall's coming out of contract in a couple of years. So is Garrett Wilson. What are you going to do? And also Garrett Wilson, what is he? What is he? He's obviously not a true wide receiver one, is he?
He reminds me of Tyler Lockett. He's just a good wide receiver that could potentially be reliable at some point. Now that Adams is there, there's probably even more of a case to state that. But he wasn't very good today, man. He had a couple of good catches, but that's it. I think Adams is going to far outshine him now for obvious reasons. I'm glad you brought up the Puka and Wilson thing, man, because I was adamant at the start of the year that we've already seen more from Puka than Garrett Wilson. No more excuses about the poor QB play that he had in his first 2 years, blah, blah, blah. He's just not that good. And that's how it is.
Puka's got that dog in him, as they say. Garrett Wilson doesn't really have it. And I'm actually concerned for him because that pick late was his fault. It was literally in his hands. It rebounded off his chest, and it was virtually a pick six. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's now demoted even further, right? And Alan Lazard is the consistent wide receiver too, just based on all that. And let's put it into context as well. Everyone's raving about Breece Hall. Breece Hall's not 100% fit, man. Did you see, like, when he broke off for that 50-yard run, he should have made it to the end zone, but he doesn't have the tank to go all the way.
He's got breakaway speed. He's got breakaway speed. Like that,
100%, but he gasses out, is what I'm saying. And look, I'm just an average Joe, so you can't just look at me and say, yeah, but what have you done? But this guy's a professional athlete getting paid millions of dollars. And he literally got caught with like 15. All right, he got the touchdown in the end, blah, 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 blah. But it could have been a 70-yard touchdown, is what I'm saying. Like, there's just these fundamental things that are... And now the Hassan Reddick thing as well. Like, what, he's going to come and change your fortunes on defense? No, it's just not.
It just reminds me of a desperate owner, a desperate GM, a desperate franchise trying to clasp at this quarterback's once great stats and performances and trying to bring themselves into relevance. Well, it's completely backfired, and we're seeing it happen right before our own eyes. So, to quote our good friend today, who was bitterly disappointed after the loss, he said, "The Jets franchise are the only Jets that will ever not have an engine in them."
So let me bring it back to Rodgers though. So to your point, Gino, that Rodgers, what do you do if you're the Jets? Like, your point is, like, you're better with them because you've invested draft capital to acquire all these pieces, including Rodgers, right? The Jets have, and then Adams on top recently. You're better with them. What's the argument there to staying with them for the rest of the year? Like, where do you go from here? And what value?
Well, I think
what value do you see as a fantasy owner if you've got any Jets players on your bench, right? Because as a Garrett Wilson owner, I'm looking at Garrett Wilson. I'm going, the fantasy value may diminish because of Adams there, but I can also see outside of fantasy that schematically it might actually end up being a good thing for Garrett Wilson, where coverage shifts towards Adams, and it frees up Garrett Wilson, right? Because I don't think he's that big contested catch wide receiver. I don't think he really gets doubled much. I think you mentioned a few weeks ago, that he doesn't really get that much separation, and I kind of agree with that. Not today's game, but last week's game. I don't think he had a pretty good game too last week, but I just thought, he just against Buffalo, I think. But I think just from a route running and getting separation, I'm not seeing that from a top wide receiver, particularly when you picked in the first round, right? So he's not in the same likes as Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. You don't think of him like that, right? But I just want to bring it back to Rodgers, though, Gio. Like, where do you go? You stick with Rodgers and you work with Adams. Now he's in the offense. He's got to be acclimated to that offense. I mean, I don't know if I want to bring it back to that. So what do you think?
Well, you've got a 3-time MVP. He knows how to play the game. He's still a very, very good and capable quarterback. Like you said, you've invested in him. You've invested in the pieces around him. It's either that or you go or you don't and you drop to Tyrod Taylor. Like, really, who are you going to choose in that argument? Of course it's Rodgers. It might be a slow burn. It might take a month to 5 weeks for the offense to really start going, for pieces potentially to come back. I don't know if they've got pieces missing on the O-line or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you've invested all your chips. They've basically, like I said earlier, they've gone all in. So you're sticking with Rodgers and you're hoping that in the next month or so that offense finds its form, clicks into gear, and then you start to see the rewards. That's how I see it.
And
I'll put it to you this way: he's not the MVP Rodgers. He's just not. He's missing easy throws, and he's just become a pocket passer now. Have you guys watched him play? There's no escaping outside the pocket, trying to extend plays. There is none of that anymore. So he's basically a shell of himself, but with the same arrogance. And then if you are thinking Devontae Adams is going to be a lifesaver, you're kidding yourself. Look, this is probably the first time I watched Devontae Adams closely this year, other than that one game where he went berserk in the last quarter and got 30 points, right? Did you guys watch Devontae Adams today? Other than his release off the line, he has lost a step. And he has lost a massive step. Man, he was always, like, not speedy, but he had this acceleration and quickness. That is not there anymore. You can put it down to the hamstrings and whatever, but this man is now 31, going on 32. That explosiveness is no longer going to be there, right? And that is scary. That the fact that he doesn't have that speed anymore to get into the correct positions. Now, I'm not blaming him for that crossing route. Absolutely not. I thought that was a terrible throw by Aaron Rodgers, and he misread it. But if you're the only one that you can really rely upon in terms of fantasy for the Jets, as you asked before, is really Breece Hall. And let's be honest about him as well. As a rusher, he's been terrible. Even today. His work was in the air. He got like a couple of dink and dunks, and he made the most of those opportunities. And granted, most leagues are PPR, right? So it's beneficial. But on the ground, he was not that good again.
Yeah, you're right. You're right in having Hall as, I think, the most reliable piece from a fantasy point of view. I think, as I said, once the offense starts to actually potentially click into gear, I think that's when you'll start to see Breece Hall maybe finding some more lanes and actually getting the per click averages up. So again, it is going to be a wait and see though, and unfortunately, there might be a little bit more pain before gain for Jets fans in that respect.
Just last thing, Fred, because I don't know what you're going to ask and where we're going to move on to, but Gino, you just said, for example, they need time to gel and so forth. But the best teams now are gelling right now. It's taken a couple of weeks because they don't really have a preseason or anything. But now the best teams like the Lions look incredible. The Packers and so forth, they are flying offensively, right? The Jets aren't. and their quarterback, rather than coming to mandatory camp, decided to go get high in bushes and like look at the stars instead, right?
Yeah.
So, how
Oh, I
much longer do
hear.
they
I
need?
hear.
You know,
I hear. I'm more saying it from the point of view that okay, Adams has just gotten there. You know, they might need to work on their chemistry a little bit. Then everything else might fall into place. But again, it is a big if. I agree. It's a big if.
Well, in summary, guys, it sounds like we've got optimistic here about Jets' future this year. If it's not that optimistic, then it's pretty much just blow it up, is what I'm hearing from the other side as well. So you can make an argue for both sides of it, but if you're a Jets fan, you're listening to this, there is some hope and there isn't. Unfortunately, we just don't know where the grey area is, right? It's one spectrum or the other. So unfortunately, Jets fans, your performance today probably doesn't give you any hope going forward, but at least if you've got Rodgers at the under center there, he might provide a little bit of reprieve for you, knowing that he can probably take you there, considering he's 3-time MVP. But then again, your history as a Jets fan and at the Jets says otherwise. It's a graveyard for quarterbacks. Boomer Esiason, Mark Sanchez, Ryan Fitzpatrick, everybody goes to the Jets to get a retirement paycheck. Unfortunately, it looks like Rodgers is treated in the same way.
Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and look at them. New teams, new systems, and they look refreshed. Ghost Man looks like an MVP candidate this year.
Go, man.
We'll move on to the second part two of the segment, I should say. Who do you trust more in the NFC West? The Niners or the Seahawks? Yeah, I'll kick it off with you. Niners or Seahawks? Who do you trust more?
Now, it might sound like a homer, but I'm going to say the 49ers. Now,
Surprise.
well, I've been probably more critical than sticking up for them, right, in the last few weeks. So I deserve a little bit of credit for that. But when I said at the start of the year that we may not win the NFC West, you guys laughed at me. And it's looking that way at the moment. Now, when I said we may not win it, I didn't think the Seattle Seahawks would be the ones that would supplant us. I actually thought it was going to be the LA Rams. But for injuries and whatever, understandable that they're not going to be thereabouts. Now, in comparison to us and the Seahawks this year have had two major challenges. They had the Detroit Lions, where they lost by 2 scores, and albeit a fantastic game. And then if they didn't have Kenneth Skywalker, they would have been screwed in that game. But they lost. And then they had the game against us, and they pretty much lost by about 2 scores in that game again. So I don't think they have the capability to beat the bigger teams. And I think Geno Smith is the main reason why. Like, if you watch him and you are asked to depend upon Geno Smith, I think you were screwed. Like, there was, like, against the Giants, for example, they should never have lost to the Giants. And it was tasked upon him to win that game, and he just couldn't do it. He couldn't hit receivers. He was turning the ball over. He was just no good. So, and I'm not saying Brock Purdy is Mr. Fantastic, because I've been even saying with him, one of the main reasons that will hold the 49ers back is the quarterback. But I do think he is better than Geno Smith. And I think in terms of positions and so forth, the 49ers have just got a better depth everywhere. We've got a better defense. All right. Hufunga's out for a while. It looks like left tackle might be out. Don't know what happened to Trent Williams late. Not sure if he just needed to take a shit or anything, but he walked off late, right? And also now we don't have Brandon Ayuk, who looks like he's going to be out for the entirety of the season. But we do have George Kittle. We do have Jordan Mason. We do potentially have the remnants of Christian McCaffrey returning as well. And against those bigger teams, I think we will contend and challenge better than what the Seattle Seahawks will. It's just facts. I mean, Seattle Seahawks fans can get sad all they want, but they suck. Let's be real.
In summary, Gino. So what I'm hearing is that because of injuries, the Niners are probably not going to perform what they would to the levels that they did last year. And so that's probably their Achilles heel at the moment is the injuries, but they don't have the star playmakers. The Seahawks don't have the star playmakers like the Niners do, but the Seahawks have a 4-3 record and number one in the NFC West. Who do you trust more, Niners or the Seahawks?
Right now, I think it's the Seahawks for me. I mean, first of all, Geno Smith is leading the league in passing yards, 1,985 passing yards. So you can't tell me that anyone was sitting there at the start of the season thinking that Geno Smith was going to be the passing yard leader to this point in that division as well, especially with the likes of the 49ers defense. Star playmakers, well, like you said, Kenneth Skywalker. I love it. You could argue that the Seahawks run game has been better in some respects. Potentially more so from a fantasy point of view. And this is coming from Walker, who's missed 2 games, I think, as well. 4-3 record. Yes, they lost to the 49ers. We get that. We know that. But the Niners are still a game back. I think the Seahawks have let's go again. I think the fuck. I was going to say Seahawks. Sorry. I think the Seahawks actually have to have one more division game that they need to play than the 49ers. So could the division games later on come into play? Maybe. Yen may need to advise on whether or not the 49ers and the Seahawks split in the division generally. I don't know the facts of that. Geno Smith's playing well, and what I see from Geno Smith is that he actually takes what he can get every week. If he sees someone open, he's going to them. He moves the ball. He moves the chains. They've got a very good coach now, Mike McDonald, who's obviously come over from the Ravens. Yeah, right. The defense is I guess a work in progress, but they're pretty sound. Like they're doing their job. Apart from potentially the division loss against the 49ers and the shambles against the Giants, they've been pretty good. Like for the most part, they've been pretty good. So look, there's still a ways to go in the division, but like I said, passing yard leader in the whole of the NFL is a big plus. There's obviously a wait and see now, I think, with DK Metcalf, who may have hurt himself today. I'm not sure if he returned to the game or not. He's a huge playmaker. Kenneth Walker's a huge playmaker. Obviously, you've got an aging Tyler Lockett there as well, who still chips in here and there. Jackson Smith-Njigba, an up-and-coming wide receiver who was highly touted coming out of college as well. So they've got the playmakers too, and I guess what I'm saying is for them to be 4-3 now, if things sort of fall into place as the season goes on for the Seahawks, they could well and truly win that division and potentially even by a couple of games if the 49ers continue to struggle the way they have been. So I think the Seahawks.
Yeah, if you've got a rebuttal to that, and given the history of the Niners and how successful they are in the NFC West, do you see the Seahawks and the Niners splitting this year in the division? What is the history with the Niners and Seahawks? No?
No, I think it's like 6-7-0. So we've beaten them consistently, and this includes a playoff game as well. So look, until they beat us, I can't see them like winning the division. I mean, all right, we're not off to the best start, I should say. But there's time. We're almost at halfway through the season. I mean, look, we had a relatively poor start a couple of seasons ago, and we pretty much ended up running the table. So I'm hoping for something similar. But I do think a lot of the blame lies on the shoulders of the coach and the quarterback. Somehow these things can be rectified. I think the 49ers should still win the division. We've also got Fred Warner. And look, if our record was better, I feel, and it could be biased, that he could be in line for Defensive Player of the Year this year. The guy's been an absolute monster. So, look, we got a few pieces missing. Ayuk's gone, fine. I mean, he wasn't playing fantastically well anyway, but that wide receiver 2 role, someone else can step up.
And from a fantasy perspective, either one of you can, like, who are we looking at from the Seahawks point of view? Like, going forward, right? If you were a fantasy owner of any of the Seahawks players, DK Metcalf is kind of speaks for itself already, but Jackson Smith and Jigba, Gino, you mentioned it before. How do you value them going forward for the rest of the season?
I saw him really come on late last year, and I actually had him rostered on my bench. Just as a depth add. Hasn't really continued that so far this season, which has surprised me. But I mean, he's one Tyler Lockett injury away from probably absolutely exploding, I would have thought. Again, though, he is in the wide receiver 3 role. So it's a wait and see. For me, the standout is Walker. I mean, he's been unbelievable. From a fantasy point of view, Kenneth Walker is the piece that you want to own in fantasy. He could well and truly be top 3 if he didn't miss those 2 games. In fact, he probably would be. He had another great game today. So moving forward, if you've got Kenneth Walker, great. If you can trade for him, you're probably going to have to pay for him handsomely. But I think Walker is the one to own moving forward, and obviously keep an eye out for Jackson Smith and Jigba in case one of the other wide receivers go down, as we've seen a plethora of injuries so far this year.
Noted. And Yen, from an eyes perspective, Debo went out for a little bit today. I think he wasn't feeling well, right? So I don't think it was an injury per se. I think he was not feeling well. I think that was some news. He wasn't feeling well. You let me know. I don't know. What's the story behind that? So, and then you got Ayuk, who looks like he's... What did they report?
I was just going to say, I think they reported it was a heartstring, didn't they?
Yeah, pretty much. Look, pretty much. I'm surprised he didn't come with the doctor's note from his wife saying he wasn't feeling well. I mean...
Okay, so Devo was a no-show. Yeah.
He was a no-show, and then he had an oxygen tank in the first quarter as well. I mean, come on. Kenneth Walker was sick too, and he had 2 touchdowns today. That was a flu game. That was like a Michael Jordan flu game situation. And Kenneth Walker took the ball and ran with it, like literally. And then Deebo Samuel felt sorry for himself on the sidelines instead. In terms of a fantasy perspective, I said it earlier, like the most consistent player on that offense is George Kittle, right? He's going to get you enough points to get you that 10 points a game, 10 to 15 points. And if he gets you that touchdown upside, you're looking at 20 points, right? He's the most reliable. Now, Deebo Samuel is going to be boom or bust, and he has been boom or bust all season, right? He's had 2 explosive games, 3 really bad games, right, and missed one. Now, having said all that, the disappointment is really Jordan Mason. Now, it's not any fault of Jordan Mason's, and people are probably looking at the box scores and are thinking Jordan Mason did shit. And it's not the case. Jordan Mason is not getting the correct opportunities. He's not getting utilized like Christian McCaffrey. There are times where he is out in the flats and then Brock Purdy just doesn't go to him for whatever reason. They probably went to him once late in the 4th quarter, and the throw was horrible. But Jordan Mason actually caught it and took it for about 8 yards whilst carrying 2 defenders on top of him. So I don't understand why these play calls for the running back have completely changed and why we're not utilizing similar schemes like we would Christian McCaffrey, because clearly the guy can run the ball. He can clearly catch the ball, so utilize him better. other than that, I don't think there's really much from the 49ers perspective. I guess it's just a wait and see on how Ricky Parasol develops.
And I just want to bring back to that point with Christian McCaffrey too. As a Niners fan, and if you've got Christian McCaffrey sitting on your bench at the moment, you'd be waiting to see how he actually gets back into the lineup, how they utilize him. I think many Niners fans want to see that outside of fantasy, right? What value does that give to the Niners offense having Christian McCaffrey back into that lineup? Because you see your offense was based around Christian McCaffrey over the last year. Has he been there 2 years now? Is this his third year there? No, was he traded there last year?
We traded for him, so this is kind of like third-ish season, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I vaguely remember when he was first traded to the Niners, that offense just went another level, right? So, having him back, you would think, as a Niners fan, that it's going to elevate your offense. And your record doesn't speak for it now, the 3-4, but you're saying Jordan Mason, why you don't use him? They're just two different running backs in the scheme of things. They're just things that Jordan Mason can't do that Christian McCaffrey does. And you've got to be excited about getting him back, right? Like that's probably a given.
If
you can get him at the same capacity.
I'm excited and concerned at the same time. Like these Achilles tendonitis just don't all of a sudden disappear. Now, this guy's a gun. Like I feel like if something was to happen and he doesn't play this year, I still feel he can come back next year and be the top running back, right? But my concern is my coach because of his arrogance. Like, because he can be really arrogant and he deviates from game plans or he doesn't try anything new. He's really, really bizarre despite the fact of what an offensive mind he is. Still hasn't figured out how to beat Andy Reid and Spags, but that's a different story altogether. But my concern is if Christian McCaffrey says that he's ready to come back, I'm scared that Kyle Shanahan will do what he's done with Jordan Mason and what he's done with every running back. He will run him into the ground to the point where he'll get injured again. And then we've got another Todd Gurley situation on our hands. That's my concern.
Gino, you've been very critical of Kyle Shanahan and how he runs things around there. And with John Lynch and GM, I don't know how much you have a lot of influence on that team, but what do you think about Christian McCaffrey's return? I think there's some valid points Ian was saying. And how tentative would you be reestablishing him into your fantasy lineup? Like, is he as soon as his designation comes off, are you putting him into your lineup straight away?
Absolutely.
He'd be on a snap count, right? Like,
my gut is saying that it's going to be a committee. As Yen said, tendonitis can flare up in the blink of an eye again. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was supposed to start training this week. He hasn't. So, reading between the lines, he's already had a setback since returning from Germany. Let's be honest now, right? This is a dude that's meant to have trained this week, and he hasn't. Maybe they wanted to be a little bit more cautious with the 49ers bye around the corner in a couple of weeks. Maybe. But for him to not be training when he was scheduled to train, and Shanahan holds cards very close to his chest, as we've touched on before. He doesn't really give a lot in his presses, but from all reports, he was supposed to train this week and he hasn't. So that's immediate alarm bells for me. From the fantasy point of view, I actually think it will be a committee. How can you possibly bring one of the best running backs back into the fold and just dump 20 to 25 touches on him from the get-go with an injury that could flare up within a quarter, or something happens, he gets a knock to it or something and it flares up? There's no way. You couldn't possibly trust having him in as your running back number one from fantasy the first week he's back. I can't see how you could trust it.
Yeah, how do you cure the Madden curse? That's what we're really asking here. Yeah.
I was just going to say, look, you make valid points, right? You would think they would go to a running back by committee, but I can't see it happening. Not under Shanahan. Shanahan loves McCaffrey. Like, if he speaks of anyone with adulation, it's probably McCaffrey the most. There is no way if he's ready to go that he's not going to just run him into the ground, and that's my concern. He's my favorite player, but I can't even see him just getting 15 carries. That's the other thing. Like it was a 15-10 split. I can't even see that. I think as soon as he comes, it's going to be all whatever it is ahead, and he'll get the majority of the snaps. And the other thing as well is when Elijah Mitchell was our number one running back before we made the trades for Christian McCaffrey. Again, he was dealing with injuries all the time, but as soon as he was ready to go, he was fed the ball and he was getting 18 to 20 carries a game. So that's my concern. Where's Elijah Mitchell now? He can barely play for like 2-3 seasons now.
Gino, before we move on, any thoughts?
I guess touching on Jordan Mason and the different game scripts that Shanahan clearly has now for Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy, I guess, for that matter, I don't understand why they're not utilizing him more in the passing game because and again, this is a personal thing for me because I have him rostered in both of our leagues. I have seen Jordan Mason open so many times for a check down for easy first downs and or potential touchdowns like one today, and Brock Purdy just does not throw him the ball. I don't get it. Why would you take that part out of your game style just because the guy that actually does it better isn't there? It just does not make sense. It does not make sense to me. He can clearly catch the ball. Yeah, sure. Not many guys are going to be as good as Christian McCaffrey. We know that as a running back and out of the backfield. We get it. But why take it out of your game style when it's worked so well for you since having McCaffrey in the team? I just don't get it. It just boggles my mind.
All right. While we're on the Niners theme anyway, I think, Gino, you've got someone to spray. And his name would be?
Brock Purdy, who I basically just went into it. Mate, you've got a running back there waiting for the ball, wide open so many times. Check it down for the easy first downs. Like I said earlier, someone like Geno Smith takes what he can get. What does Brock Purdy do? Oh, I might go for a jog and run 20 to 30 yards to throw a 40-yard incompletion. Like, seriously, take what you can get. The offense is already struggling, and the record shows that. The Niners aren't the Niners right now. Yes, there's injuries and blah, 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 but like a lot of it comes down to what Brock Purdy is doing and the way Kyle Shanahan is coaching. But seriously, Brock, Mason's there. He's more than capable. He is explosive. He's so explosive. Check down the ball, take what you can get, and stop trying to be the hero on every single play and throwing it deep. It just does not work. Hence your 3 interceptions today, my friend. Seriously, get it right. It's in here. Do the smart things.
There must be something with Brock Purdy that people do like because he is rostered in over 90% of fantasy rosters by consensus at the moment. So there's something about Brock Purdy. And yeah, you could probably touch more on this. What is it about Brock Purdy from a fantasy perspective that people would have them start or stream him from week to week if, there's a bye or an injury or some sort at quarterback?
It's got nothing to do
with
Brock. It's got nothing to do with Brock Purdy and its talent. It's to do with the scheme that he's in and the offense, because we are a high-scoring offense. We are averaging 27 points per game. So that's why you play Brock Purdy, because you want to get in on that just in case he has a field day and he does throw the 2-3 touchdowns, or he does throw one off to Kittle or Deebo Samuel and they take it to the house. That's why you're playing Brock Purdy. It's got nothing to do with his talent. You can't rely on him to be a consistent 25 point per game scorer. You're rostering him because you want a piece of the 49ers offense. That's what it is.
Fair assessment. Gino, before you move on, any closing thoughts here?
Not really. I just hope that Shanahan and Purdy actually utilize Mason as they should be. For not just for myself personally, for anyone that has Jordan Mason, until McCaffrey comes back, he's the guy. Like, we want to see that he's being used correctly. He should be having at least 4 to 5 targets a game. And who knows? If the scheme's right, he might take one of those to the house or for a 40-yarder and get you those bonus points. That's all I want to see. Just utilize him properly.
We'll move on to the next segment and we'll talk about some previews. So week 8 previews. Can you believe, guys, that we're almost at the halfway mark of the NFL season? I can't believe it. And when I think about it, like by the time Christmas comes around, Super Bowl will be here, and then it's another 6 months of off season, which is, I don't want to think about it, to be honest with you, because it's the best part of the year. So first game, week 8, we have Bengals, Eagles in Cincinnati at Paycor. Guys, let me just get your takes on who you think are going to get the W here, and must starts from both sides, if you may. So, Yen, I'll start with you.
Well, look, it's at the Bengals. Look, I'm not that impressed with what Philly did against the Giants. Is anyone? Look, if it wasn't for Saquon Barkley having another one of those huge games, like, would they have really been that good? And also they played against the Giants, who are really, really suspect. So I'm picking Cincinnati despite their defensive woes. The line's currently at 2.5 points, which is great. So if you want to get on it early and just take the points, like, that's a field goal. So that's what they need to clear. But if you look at how the offense is humming, and if the record was better for the Cincinnati Bengals, you could pretty much say that Joe Burrow would be the outright MVP favorite. Not this Patrick Mahomes rubbish who's 6 TDs and 8 INTs but has a 6-0 record. That is just an absolute joke. And if Mahomes wins it, you may as well just not watch NFL again. If he wins MVP and they also win the Super Bowl, just put it down to scripted and never watch NFL ever again. But the Bengals should win, and they should absolutely annihilate that woeful secondary. Like, just look for Jamar Chase and Higgins to continue doing what they're doing. You could probably speak on it better than what I have.
No, Joe Burrow, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, so 7-1 ratio for the year. So he's having a very good year. His best starts in the first half of an NFL season, arguably, and healthy as well. So he's actually having a really good start. As you're talking about the Eagles secondary, from a fantasy perspective, they're ranked 23rd against wide receivers. Ranked 6 against wide receivers. So 6th easiest. So if you're looking a start, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I think it's a given Jamar Chase, but if you've got Higgins there waiting as a flex that you're looking, start him, because actually Higgins, he's getting the targets. He had a touchdown today, but he's looking pretty good since he's returned. And there's probably a fair case that he's actually freed up Jamar Chase on the other side too with his presence there. So they're both eating at the wide receiver positions. But they've had the last 2 weeks, the offenses haven't fired, like where they're getting the 30 points over, but at least the defense have come to play. And so they've got, a couple of wins under their belt. So they're stacking them nicely going to this Eagles game. Gino, your thoughts?
I have a question. Is the Bengals O-line 100% healthy?
Orlando Brown, he went out just before the second half with a knee injury, but apparently he's okay. So they'll monitor him this week. And even when he did go out, Myles Garrett, who lined up over Cody Ford, who was the backup left tackle, Myles Garrett had no I think Miles Garrett's carrying a couple of injuries. I think his feet are plaguing him a little bit, but he had literally no effect on this game, which is quite odd to see as a Bengals fan because he usually wrecks our games, Miles Garrett. So yeah, I think he's the only question mark at the moment is Orlando Brown on the left hand.
So they withheld the pressure today, as in they were pretty good.
Yeah, Burrow, they made some adjustments in the second half. In the first half, Burrow got sacked a couple of times, but they made the adjustments and he wasn't seeing that pressure. And then pretty much in the third quarter, he threw 2 touchdowns, one in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So he had a bit more time in the second half outside, even when the Orlando Brown Jr. went out of the game. So, yeah, look pretty good. Okay. Look pretty good from an offensive point of view in the second half.
The reason I'm asking is because the Eagles D had 7 sacks today on Daniel Jones. Now, I mean, if there's a hole in the Bengals line, that's alarm bells for me because, okay, their offense wasn't great. Hurts only threw for, I think it was under 120 yards or something like that.
114.
They held, 114. There you go. They held Daniel Jones to 99 with 7 sacks. The Eagles then gained their momentum from their defense. So if their defense is kind of pepping up, and I get that their secondary isn't great, but if their pass rush comes to play, I think that might actually be trouble for the Bengals. So I'm actually going to go Eagles here. And not that their offense is humming. I just think from potentially a defensive point of view in that front, if they can get that sort of pressure on Burrow, they can be quite savvy in terms of making plays defensively. I've noticed with the Eagles, they're very opportunistic. So potentially it could be a dangerous game for the Bengals if they can. If the Eagles can get that pass rush going, it'll be a dangerous game for the Bengals. So I'm going to go Eagles, but in a very close one.
Yeah, that's fair. I think if I've seen a stat just before week 7, I think next gen stats, I think Burrow is number 1 against the blitz. So I think he's got like 6 touchdowns against the blitz or something like that. So it could be. So I don't know how the Eagles defense, and I'd like to watch a bit of tape on them this week going into this game. But if it's blitz, that's that troubled Jones. I'd like to see that. But if it's just pure pass rush, he does tend to stay in the pocket and trust his O-line a bit more this year, particularly if it's just your base front rushing. But against the blitz, he's elite this year. He's number 1 against the blitz. So, I'm taking the Bengals in a close one too. So I buy field goal just on the basis of what I saw from the Eagles against the Giants, because we just played the Giants a week ago. So, Bengals, Eagles.
I was just going to say before we move on to the next game, I think a key to Joe Burrow's performances is the fact that his hair's starting to grow out again. So normalize his performances. So yeah, looking all.
No, he's got the tips though. He's still got the tips though. It looks weird now.
Just imagine when it fully grows out again, he'll be like unstoppable.
Yeah, grow it back. All right, next game, Bucks Atlanta. This will be a good one. Atlanta actually lost today. Who'd they get beat by? The Seahawks, right? They played the Seahawks. Yeah. So Bucks Atlanta. Your thoughts? Who are you taking? Any starts? Must starts.
Well, the Falcons got them last time, didn't they?
Yeah.
Game-winning drive. Yeah. The way that division's going, I mean, it would not surprise me if the Bucks even things out. I think you could safely say that their offense is playing a lot more consistently so far than the Falcons. I'll go Bucks. I think the Bucks, I mean, obviously they still need to finish off their week this week, in tomorrow's game. But since we're obviously previewing, I think I'll go the Bucks to even things out, and Baker to get the Bucks back on track in the division, because the Falcons are currently leading. So, and it's take your pick, really. You can't really trust any of the Bucks running backs, unfortunately, because Todd Bowles came out today and basically said he's going to run with the hot hand from week to week between White, Irving, and their number 3, who his name escapes me, Tucker. Is it Tucker?
Yeah, Sean Tucker, Sean Taylor.
Sean Tucker, yeah. So you can't really trust any of the backs. I mean, if you've got Evans or Godwin, it seems that they exchange high scores from week to week. 1 week it's Evans, 1 week it's Godwin. So whoever scores well tomorrow, go the opposite next week and choose one of those guys.
Baker Mayfield, he's got to play his game tomorrow. He's having a stellar season, completing over 70% of his passes. He's actually tied equal for touchdown passes at 15, and then he'll surpass that tomorrow if he throws a touchdown or two. But 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, QB3 for the year. So he's having a great year. Yeah, I'm going to go Bucks. Yeah, I'll get your thoughts.
Bucks are favourite by a touchdown. I think they're going to right the wrongs from, what was it, a couple of weeks ago. So I think the Bucks are going to win this game. They probably should have won a couple of weeks ago. They let it slip. I just think they're a better team, just top to bottom. I mean, both defenses are not very good. You probably say that the Falcons secondary is significantly better. And as to the Mike Evans, Chris Godwin thing, I think it hasn't helped that Mike Evans has been under an injury designation for the last couple of weeks as well. And you probably kind of like noticeable as well because his scores haven't been anywhere near as what they've been in the first 4 weeks. Look, I'm going with the Bucks. Like I said, I just like what they're doing offensively, and I think I'm going to go with Mr. Fun to continue this ride.
You guys mentioned tight end because I think the Atlanta Falcons defense are number 1, meaning they're the easiest to score on as a defense and tight ends for the league. So, who was their tight end at the Bucks? Remind me. Did you guys just touch on them?
Cade
Otton, that's right. That'd be an interesting stream if you're looking to take advantage of some advanced stats there. Okay, next game we will preview is Arizona-Miami. Yeah, I'll start with you.
Game. This is interesting because I think it's dependent on Tua's return. Because even today, the Miami Dolphins offense was woeful. Other than like Devon A-Chain being good on the ground, the rest of it was shithouse. Let's be real. Like their quarterbacks just can't get it to the wide receivers, and I just don't understand. You've got the quickest wide receiver with the quickest release, and you can give him only 1 or 2 targets. They just came off a bye. Like, I don't understand what is going on in Miami. I don't understand what happened in the bye. I thought the mini offensive guru in Mike McDaniel was going to have this sorted for this week. Obviously not. But if Tua is back, I think Miami is going to win, and they're going to win quite convincingly because, again, their secondary is not very good. And that might be a return to form game for Tyreek Hill. Look to buy him on the low, by the way. There'll be some people that drafted Tyreek Hill with either pick 2 or pick 3 and are pulling their hair out. So if you want to take that risk, you could probably offer like a couple of mid-tier pieces and snare him. But then you also run that risk of, does Tua come back? So I think they're going to win. They screwed me this morning on a $1,200 multi. I had Tyreek Hill to score a touchdown, and that like bit me in the ass. Otherwise, I would have won it. But I'm going to roll with it again, and I reckon he's going to score a touchdown next week if Tua is back. So I'm going with Miami, and I'm saying start Tyreek Hill on the proviso that Tua starts.
And what do you? Is it a comfortable win, Yen, for the Dolphins?
I think so. I think if Tua's back, that for whatever reason that team is different, and not that Tua Tagovailoa is a superb quarterback because he really isn't, but he knows to throw it to the correct spots, and he does read defenses significantly better. So I think it's quite a comfortable win. And look, Kyler Murray hasn't lived up to the hype that we all thought. Let's be real.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to piggyback. I think if Tua is back, it's very much dependent on if he's back this week. But let's go with he is, because the news is that he should be back this week. They were targeting week 8. I think that will make a lot of Tyreek Hill owners very, very happy. And I think that's going to be the difference. I think if Tua's back, he'll have that connection back finally with Tyreek Hill. He'll have his 30 to 40 point game, and everything will be rosy and sunny back in Miami. So I think Miami will get the win. And yeah, I'll just piggyback off Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane. They're the two to start.
Please come back to it. You are RB2 before. A-Chain was RB2 before he got injured, so please come back.
So there's a little bit of there's a vested interest there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to be different. I'm going to get Arizona because I don't like Miami. Never have. So I'm just going to go Arizona. Next game, Buffalo, Seattle. This will be a good game. Very good game. Gino, I'll start with you. Who do you think gets the chocolates, mate?
Buffalo. It's in Buffalo, yeah?
Give me 1 second. I'll let you know, but you tell me.
That's okay.
Seattle.
This is a huge game. It's in Seattle. Okay. That's even bigger. Obviously, the addition of Amari Cooper to this offense is a very, very big deal. And again, having the personal interest in Josh Allen. I watched a fair bit of that game to see how the offense sort of ran. They started slow. The Titans did quite well to actually hold the Bills to a fairly low score at halftime. But after that, everything started ticking along.
Yeah, it's a game of two halves. So it's
It really, yeah. In this particular instance, it really was, because they started utilizing Amari Cooper a lot more, and that actually brought in Keon Coleman into the game, and he had a very, very good game after the first half. So having Amari Cooper in this offense, when now they had a couple of little sputters a couple of weeks ago with the losses, and then we were questioning everything about the Bills. This addition of Amari Cooper is going to set the Bills apart now in the AFC East. I think the Bills are getting a couple of pieces back as well on defense, if I'm not mistaken, this coming week. And I actually think the Bills will get the job done in an upset in Seattle. Obviously, you need to start Josh Allen. That's a given. But if you want to do something a little bit left field, Keon Coleman is going to probably start to flourish now that Amari Cooper is going to get a fair bit of attention. So I think Keon Coleman could be a decent flex option this week if you want to pick him up.
yeah.
Well, it's not really an upset. The line currently is a 3-point favorite for Buffalo. So Buffalo is currently a field goal favorite. What I like is the over-under at the moment of 48.5 points. That's like 24 points each. And I think this will be a high-scoring affair. I think Kenneth Walker will still eat. And again, I'm a little bit biased because I did draft him and I've got him everywhere. But I think with this defensive line that he's up against, I think he's going to have a very good game again. Provided that, again, Mike McDonald does do some weird things where early on, and again, he did it against the Giants, he did it against us, where rather than using I think Kenneth Walker's their best weapon. Rather than utilizing him early, they went pass heavy, which I don't understand. So if they can lean on the run game early, I think that will help Seattle. But having said all that, I'm going to go with the best quarterback, and the best quarterback in this matchup is Josh Allen, and I think they will win, and they'll probably just cover the line as well.
Yeah, no surprises here. I'm going Buffalo. I'm just going to base it on what the Seattle Seahawks defense has allowed from a fantasy perspective. So they're in the top 10 in terms of fantasy points given to running backs. So they're actually the ninth easiest defense to run on if you're the Seahawks. So James Cook could be a factor, and also Dalton Kincaid. So they're actually the seventh easiest tight group in terms of tight ends against the Seahawks. So Dalton Kincaid could be a factor here just based on points allowed from a fantasy perspective. So I'm going to take Buffalo here to get the chocolates. Any last thoughts on this game before we move to a perler in the next one? Cool. And the last game we'll have a look at is Niners Cowboys. And I think this is in Dallas, I think.
It is in
Santa Clara.
Santa Clara. It is
Yes,
at the
it is.
home of the 49ers.
Gino. Wait, before you go there, both teams got their backs up against the wall. They need the win. Both of them do, right? Particularly a conference game. These teams have history going back decades, meeting each other in NFC championships, NFC divisional games. The history is rich with this team. But not only is there's a bit of spice in this game because of their history, but there's a bit of urgency, right? They need to show their fan base of why they've got these big name stars on both sides of the coin. But then also Dak needs to actually show why they paid him $60 million a year, the highest paid quarterback, and to have a losing division. Win 2 playoff games in 8 years, and he's getting paid that kind of money. What are your thoughts? Who gets the win, and who are your must-starts?
This is going to be a rout. I think the 49ers are going to absolutely smack the pants off the Cowboys. And I can tell you exactly how they're going to do it. They are going to run down their throats. The Cowboys' run defense is horrendous. From memory, it's probably the second or last in terms of fantasy. So Jordan Mason will have 30 touches, 30 rushes for 152 at a minimum, I would have thought, because I can't remember who the Cowboys played the week before their bye, but whoever the running back there was had an absolute field day from memory. So look for Jordan Mason to finally be utilized correctly, and maybe even the passing game, but he will do the damage on the ground. And I think the 49ers will be comfortable 2 touchdown winners.
Look, be a bit nice. They only played the Detroit Lions before they went on bye.
Right.
So
Enough
yes,
said.
both they basically 140 yards and 4 touchdowns between the 2 running backs.
There you go.
But in Jordan Mason's case, he's more likely to run for 150 yards and 0 touchdowns because Brock Purdy's going to shark him. So he'll get you 15 points in that instance. But I agree with you. We're going to absolutely rout them. And forget about decades history. Let's look at recent history. Just in the last 3 to 4 years, we have smacked them, right? They've come close once. And again, that was only close because we let the foot off the gas and we let a 2 and a bit score lead become a field goal, right? So unless they're going to unleash some master plan like Ezekiel Elliott being a center again, there is no chance that they are going to beat us. And like you said, we're going to run the ball down their throats, look for Kittle to also be that safe outlet when it falls short. And I think those 2 are going to be the main stalwarts. And also, if Mr. Heartstrings is healthy and fit this week, Deebo Samuel might get a few rushes in between as well. But I cannot see the Dallas Cowboys beating us. Absolutely not.
Yeah, pick your poison, right? Dallas. So they're 10th overall in terms of points allowed against running backs. So not quite 1 or 2, as you were saying, Gino, but they are in the top 10. But tight end, George Kittle, tight end number 1 after week 7. And they are 8th in terms of ranking against points allowed against tight ends. So pick your poison: run game, or the tight ends. And George Kittle having the time of his life so far. So I'm gonna jump on the backs of Dallas. No. Niners. Probably not an absolute shellacking like you guys are saying, but 6 points. 6 points. Any closing thoughts? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. That is week 7. Any thoughts? Any closing thoughts? No?
Yeah, I've actually got one.
Oh, okay.
If you're in a league that is quite tight in terms of the standings and you're not quite sure on your roster, the time to trade is now to make the playoff run. Look for some trades that might get you the 2-for-1s.
Oh, yeah, and he's bloody planting the seed here. He's like going like this. He's like
we already saw the messages earlier on before this at
Jordan
around
Mason.
3 o'clock. Oh, if Jordan Mason and Jordan Reed are up for grabs,
he's
2-for-1.
He's running back number 2. Like, far out. Come on, mate.
I'm just saying, right? A few years ago, after week 6, I was 3-3. I made a particular trade that made a particular person extremely unhappy to the point here where he left the league and the Facebook page and went on an absolute tear. That's all I'm saying. Just look for a trade that could be a difference maker for your team. That's all I'm saying.
Was that the Todd Gurley trade?
Yeah. That was the Todd Gurley trade, yep.
I almost quit that season as well because of that trade.
I can't forget about our trade last year. Like, I had PTSD when Gino sent me Mark Andrews this year. I'm like, mate, when you sent me Mark Andrews last year, he was gone in that game against the Bengals. Man, PTSD after that one. Never again.
And then you dropped the tight end. He got 18 points that week.
Who was that? You have to remind me.
Didn't you have Evan Engram and you dropped him when the trade went through?
Yeah. Oh well.
Fantasy
started the Giants
this
week. Yeah.
Well, last week I lost by 1.5 because I had to start Javonte Williams. He had 4 or 5 points at one stage, and because he had got a fumble and it was recovered by the defense, he ended up with minus 0.7 for that game and ended up losing by 1.5.
Yeah, look what he did this week. 14 rushes, 88 yards, and he scored a couple of touchdowns. So,
yeah,
the tail of
go figure. That's why on the chat I was like, I hate Javonte Williams.
He will 100% be rostered by Yen again this week. He'll start him and he'll probably get him a 2.3 and then back to the waiver.
You laugh about roster changes. We've made just as many this year. I had a look.
I know. I actually have. I've actually made plenty myself.
Yeah, you guys are going ham on the waiver wire. But funnily enough, Javonte Williams is actually rostered in over 80% of leagues. In Tank Bigsby, who's actually had a decent year, right? He's only rostered in 50% of the league. So I don't know. I don't know what that means though. Like, is people starting Javonte Williams? Because that's
not really.
I think the Tank Bigsby issue is the Travis Etienne thing. Because again, Doug Peterson came out and said Travis Etienne is the number 1 running back. And I don't understand how, because when they both played together, Tank Bigsby was far superior, far more explosive. So I don't understand it. So it's only a matter of time, and I think that's what the issue is and why people aren't fully getting Tank Bigsby into their sides. But in a league like ours, right, players like that are snapped up relatively quickly.
Yeah, that doesn't look like running back 2, like his stat line this week. 26 rushes, 118 yards, and a couple of balls he was targeted in the air. So that doesn't look like running back 2 numbers if Travis Etienne is the clear consensus number 1 there. Okay, guys, so that's the end of our podcast after week 7. There's a couple of games to go. We'll talk about that in next week's podcast. It's been a pleasure, gents. I'm Freddie. This is Gino. This is Yen. Week 7, 3-man coverage. We're out. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.